This video contains audio content only. There are no visual elements or images accompanying the audio. If you're expecting to see video footage, please note that this is an intentional audio-only presentation. We recommend listening to this content rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the audio. Hello and welcome, culture enthusiasts and curious minds. Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey to explore one of the world's most intriguing and lesser-known communities, the Kalash people of Pakistan. Nestled in the remote valleys of the Hindu Kush mountains, this small ethnic group has captured the imagination of anthropologists, historians, and travelers alike. Their unique way of life, distinct religious practices, and colorful traditions stand in stark contrast to the surrounding Islamic culture, making them a true cultural enigma. In this deep dive, we'll unravel the mysteries surrounding the Kalash, from their contested origins to their fight for cultural survival in the modern world. We'll explore their polytheistic beliefs that have withstood centuries of change, their vibrant festivals that paint their valleys with joy, and the genetic heritage that tells a story of ancient connections and isolation. But this isn't just a tale of a quaint, isolated community frozen in time. The story of the Kalash is one of resilience in the face of enormous pressures, from forced conversions and land disputes to the double-edged sword of tourism and modernization. It's a microcosm of the challenges faced by indigenous peoples worldwide, raising profound questions about cultural preservation, identity, and the very nature of progress. So, whether you're an armchair anthropologist, a history buff, or simply someone who loves to learn about the world's diverse cultures, buckle up. We're about to embark on a journey that will challenge your perceptions, ignite your curiosity, and perhaps even inspire you to think differently about your own cultural identity. Let's dive into the colorful, complex, and captivating world of the Kalash. 1. Origins and history of the Kalash people. Our journey begins with the origins of the Kalash, a tale as colorful and complex as the people themselves. Imagine, if you will, a people so distinct from their neighbors that legends swirl around them like mist in their mountain valleys. The Kalash, numbering only about 3,000 to 5,000 individuals, have called the secluded valleys of Bumburay, Rumbar, and Barir in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province home for centuries. But where did they come from? One of the most romantic and persistent theories about the Kalash origins is that they are descendants of Alexander the Great soldiers. Picture it. The year is 326 BCE, and Alexander's mighty army is pushing into the Indian subcontinent. As the story goes, some of his men, enchanted by the beauty of these remote valleys, decided to stay behind, founding a community that would eventually become the Kalash we know today. It's a captivating tale, isn't it? The idea that this small, fair-skinned community nestled in the Hindu Kush could be living proof of Alexander's legendary campaign. However, as much as we might love a good historical romance, modern genetic studies have thrown cold water on this theory. While the Kalash do indeed have predominantly Western Eurasian ancestry, there's no specific genetic link to ancient Greeks that would support the Alexander connection. So, if not from Alexander's army, where did the Kalash come from? The truth, as is often the case in history, is likely more complex and no less fascinating. Genetic and linguistic evidence suggests that the Kalash are an ancient Indo-Aryan people, part of a larger group that migrated into South Asia thousands of years ago. Their language, Kalasha, is part of the Dardic group of Indo-Aryan languages, related to but distinct from the surrounding Khor language. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Kalash appear to have been isolated from other South Asian populations for an incredibly long time, possibly as long as 11,800 years. This prolonged isolation has resulted in a unique genetic makeup that sets them apart not just from their immediate neighbors, but from most other populations in the region. Imagine being part of a community that has remained largely unchanged for thousands of years while the world around you transformed dramatically. It's as if the Kalash have been living in a time capsule, preserving cultural and genetic traits that have long since disappeared or mixed in other populations. This isolation wasn't just genetic, but cultural and religious as well. While the regions around them adopted Islam, the Kalash held onto their ancient polytheistic beliefs. They became known to their Muslim neighbors as kafirs, or infidels, a term that, while derogatory, highlights their unique status in the region. The Kalash weren't always so few in number. Historical records suggest that they once inhabited a much larger area, including parts of what is now Afghanistan's Nuristan province. In fact, the people of Nuristan were known as Red Kafirs and shared many cultural similarities with the Kalash until their forcible conversion to Islam in the late 19th century. The story of the Kalash is also one of survival against incredible odds. Throughout their history, they faced numerous threats to their existence. In the late 19th century, when the British were drawing the border between Afghanistan and British India, now Pakistan, the Kalash found themselves, almost by chance, on the British side. This quirk of history likely saved them from the fate of forced conversion that befell their cousins in Nuristan. But their challenges were far from over. As Pakistan became an Islamic republic following independence in 1947, the Kalash found themselves an even smaller minority. They faced pressure to convert, encroachment on their lands, and the gradual erosion of their traditional way of life. Yet, against all odds, they persisted. The Kalash of today are not mere relics of the past, but a living, breathing community fighting to maintain their identity in the face of immense pressures. Their story is one of resilience, adaptability, and the enduring power of cultural identity. As we delve deeper into the unique aspects of Kalash culture and religion in the coming sections, keep in mind this extraordinary history. The beliefs, practices, and traditions we'll explore are not just quaint customs, but the living heritage of a people who have maintained their unique identity for thousands of years against incredible odds. The Kalash are, in many ways, a window into our shared human past, offering insights into beliefs and ways of life that have long since disappeared in most parts of the world. 2. Unique religious beliefs of the Kalash. Now, let's step into the spiritual world of the Kalash, a realm as colorful and vibrant as their famous festivals. The religious beliefs of the Kalash are a fascinating blend of animism, polytheism, and nature worship, with elements that echo ancient Indo-Iranian religions. It's a belief system that has survived for millennia, resisting the waves of monotheism that have swept through the region. At the heart of Kalash religion is a profound reverence for nature. The Kalash believe that their valleys are alive with spirits and deities, each playing a crucial role in the natural order. Imagine living in a world where every mountain, every stream, every forest is not just a physical entity, but a spiritual presence to be respected and honored. The Kalash pantheon is rich and diverse. They worship a supreme creator god called Dezau, but unlike in monotheistic religions, Dezau is just one of many divine beings. There's Mahandio, the god of crops and war, Gestak, the goddess of home and family, and Sorazan, the goddess of wine and the vine. Yes, you heard that right, the Kalash have a goddess of wine. In fact, wine plays a significant role in Kalash religious ceremonies, setting them apart from their Muslim neighbors. But it's not just the gods that populate the Kalash spiritual world. They also believe in fairies or Parian, supernatural beings that live in the high mountain pastures. These fairies are said to be beautiful and seductive, but also dangerous. They can bring good fortune, but also cause illness or misfortune if displeased. The belief in fairies is so strong that certain areas of the mountains are considered off-limits, sacred to these supernatural beings. One of the most intriguing aspects of Kalash religion is their relationship with purity and impurity. Unlike many other religions where impurity is seen as wholly negative, the Kalash view it as a natural part of life. Women, for instance, are considered impure during menstruation and childbirth, but this isn't seen as a punishment or a curse. Instead, it's viewed as a powerful state that needs to be managed carefully. During these times, women retreat to a special building called a bashali. Now, before you think this is a form of exclusion or oppression, understand that in Kalash culture, the bashali is a place of power. Women in the bashali are believed to be in a state of elevated spiritual significance. They're seen as closer to the goddess Dezalik, who governs childbirth and women's matters. It's a fascinating inversion of the concept of impurity that we see in many other cultures. The Kalash also have a unique approach to death and the afterlife. Unlike their Muslim neighbors who bury their dead, the Kalash practice open-air funerals. The deceased are placed in wooden coffins above ground, adorned with their possessions and left exposed to the elements. This practice is rooted in the belief that the soul needs to be free to journey to the afterlife, unencumbered by the earth. But perhaps the most visible and vibrant expressions of Kalash religion are their festivals. The Kalash celebrate three major festivals each year: Joshi in spring, Uchao in autumn, and Shamos in midwinter. These aren't just festive occasions, they're deeply spiritual events that mark important transitions in the natural and agricultural cycle. Shamos, the winter solstice festival, is particularly significant. For nearly 2 weeks, the Kalash engage in purification rituals, sacrifices, and ecstatic dancing. Wine flows freely, and there's a palpable sense of joy and spiritual renewal. It's during Shamos that young people often choose their marriage partners, adding a layer of social significance to the religious celebrations. What's truly remarkable about these festivals is how they bind the community together. In a world where many traditional cultures are losing their younger generations to modernization, Kalash youth actively participate in and look forward to these ancient celebrations. It's a testament to the enduring power of their religious traditions. But the Kalash religion isn't static. Like all living belief systems, it has evolved over time. Some practices, like animal sacrifice, have become less common due to economic pressures. Others have been influenced by contact with outside cultures. Yet the core of their beliefs, the reverence for nature, the pantheon of gods and spirits, the cycle of festivals, remains intact. This resilience is all the more impressive when you consider the pressures the Kalash face. Surrounded by a majority Muslim population, they faced both subtle and overt pressures to convert. Some Kalash have indeed converted to Islam over the years, but many remain steadfast in their traditional beliefs. The Pakistani government has made efforts to protect the Kalash and their religious practices, recognizing their value as a unique cultural heritage. However, the community still faces challenges. The influx of tourists, while bringing economic benefits, also risks commodifying their religious practices. There's a delicate balance to be struck between preserving their traditions and adapting to the modern world. As we reflect on the religious beliefs of the Kalash, it's worth considering what we can learn from them. In a world grappling with environmental crises, their deep reverence for nature offers a powerful alternative perspective. Their approach to concepts like purity and impurity challenges our often binary thinking about these issues. And their joyous, community-centered festivals remind us of the power of shared spiritual experiences. The religion of the Kalash is more than just a quaint relic of the past. It's a living, breathing spirituality that has sustained a community for thousands of years. As we move forward, the challenge will be how to ensure that this unique belief system can continue to thrive in an increasingly interconnected world. 3. Distinct cultural practices and traditions. Now that we've explored the fascinating religious beliefs of the Kalash, let's dive into their equally captivating cultural practices and traditions. The Kalash way of life is a vibrant tapestry woven from ancient customs, unique social norms, and a deep connection to their mountainous homeland. It's a culture that stands out starkly against the backdrop of mainstream Pakistani society, making the Kalash truly one of a kind. One of the most visually striking aspects of Kalash culture is their traditional clothing. Kalash women, in particular, are known for their colorful and elaborate attire. Picture this. Long black robes made from hand-woven wool, adorned with intricate embroidery in vibrant reds, oranges, and yellows. But it's their headdresses that truly catch the eye. Known as kupas or susit, these headdresses are adorned with cowrie shells, buttons, and beads, creating a dazzling display that's both beautiful and symbolic. The kupas aren't just fashion statements, they're loaded with cultural significance. The design and decorations of a woman's headdress can indicate her marital status, her family lineage, and even her personal accomplishments. It's a wearable biography, a testament to the Kalash belief in the importance of individual identity within the community. Kalash men, on the other hand, have largely adopted the shalwar kameez common in Pakistan, but they often add their own touch with colorful vests and the distinctive chitrali cap. During festivals, however, they don more traditional attire, including woolen cloaks and their own ornate headdresses. But Kalash culture goes far deeper than its visual elements. Their social structure and customs are equally fascinating. Unlike the patriarchal societies that surround them, Kalash culture affords women a remarkable degree of freedom and respect. Women can choose their own husbands, and if unhappy in their marriages, they have the right to leave and remarry. This practice, known as elopement, is accepted and even celebrated in Kalash society. Imagine a society where love marriages aren't just accepted, but are the norm. Young Kalash men and women have ample opportunity to mingle and get to know each other during festivals and daily life. When a couple decides to marry, they often elope to a relative's house for a few days. Upon their return, the community celebrates their union with feasting and dancing. It's a far cry from the arranged marriages common in many parts of South Asia. Another unique aspect of Kalash culture is their approach to education. Despite their remote location and small population, the Kalash place a high value on learning. In recent years, with support from both the Pakistani government and international organizations, they've established schools that teach not only standard subjects but also Kalash language, history, and traditions. It's a delicate balancing act between preserving their heritage and preparing their youth for the modern world. The Kalash are also known for their music and dance traditions. Their songs, passed down orally through generations, tell the stories of their gods, their history, and their daily lives. During festivals, the valleys come alive with the sound of drums and flutes, accompanying energetic dances that can last for hours. These dances aren't just entertainment, they're a form of worship, a way of connecting with the divine and with each other. One cannot talk about Kalash culture without mentioning their unique culinary traditions. The Kalash diet is based on local produce, dairy products, and occasionally meat. But it's their love for wine that sets them apart in Islamic Pakistan. The Kalash make their own wine from grapes grown in their valleys, and it plays a central role in their religious and social life. During festivals, wine flows freely, lubricating social interactions and facilitating spiritual experiences. The Kalash also have a fascinating approach to architecture. Their houses, built of stone, mud, and wood, are designed to withstand the harsh mountain climate while reflecting their cultural values. Many houses feature intricate wood carvings, often depicting animals or geometric patterns. The layout of Kalash villages, with houses clustered tightly together on hillsides, speaks to their strong sense of community. Perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of Kalash culture is their relationship with the natural world. The Kalash practice a form of transhumance, moving their livestock between winter villages in the valleys and summer pastures high in the mountains. This seasonal migration isn't just an economic necessity, it's a cultural ritual that connects the Kalash to their landscape and to their ancestors who have followed the same paths for thousands of years. The Kalash also have a rich tradition of oral literature, including epic poetry, folktales, and proverbs. These stories and sayings encapsulate their worldview, their history, and their moral values. In a culture without a written language until recently, this oral tradition has been crucial in preserving and transmitting their heritage. However, like many indigenous cultures around the world, the Kalash face significant challenges in maintaining their traditional way of life. The pressures of modernization, the allure of mainstream Pakistani society, and the economic realities of the 21st century all pose threats to Kalash culture. Tourism, while bringing much-needed income to the community, also risks turning Kalash culture into a commodity. There's a fine line between sharing one's culture with the world and performing it for tourists. The Kalash are grappling with how to navigate this balance, how to welcome visitors while maintaining the authenticity and integrity of their traditions. Despite these challenges, the Kalash have shown remarkable resilience. They've adapted to change while holding onto the core of their cultural identity. Young Kalash are finding ways to bridge their traditional world with the modern one, using social media to share their culture with the world while still participating in ancient festivals and customs. The story of Kalash culture is not one of a static, unchanging tradition, but of a living, breathing way of life that has evolved over millennia while retaining its essential character. It's a testament to the strength of cultural identity and the human capacity for adaptation in the face of change. As we move forward in our exploration of the Kalash, remember that these cultural practices aren't mere curiosities. They're the living heritage of a people who have maintained their unique identity against incredible odds. The Kalash culture offers us a window into alternative ways of organizing society, relating to nature, and finding meaning in life. In a world that often seems to be moving towards homogeneity, the Kalash remind us of the value and vibrancy of cultural diversity. 4. Genetic heritage and connections to ancient populations. Now, let's dive into one of the most fascinating aspects of the Kalash story, their genetic heritage. The DNA of the Kalash people tells a tale as intriguing as their cultural practices, offering a window into ancient human migrations and the power of genetic isolation. When geneticists first studied the Kalash, they were in for a surprise. Despite their geographical location in South Asia, the Kalash showed a genetic profile that was predominantly Western Eurasian. In fact, some early studies suggested that the Kalash might have the highest proportion of Western Eurasian ancestry of any South Asian population. But it's not just the origin of their genes that's interesting, it's also how those genes have been preserved. The Kalash appear to have been genetically isolated for an incredibly long time, possibly for as long as 11,800 years. That's older than the pyramids, older than the invention of writing. This long isolation has led to what geneticists call a genetic drift. Certain genetic variants have become more common in the Kalash population than in other groups. One fascinating discovery came from a study published in 2015. Researchers found that the Kalash share a significant portion of their genome with a 24,000-year-old Paleolithic Siberian hunter-gatherer known as Ma1, and with the Yamnaya culture of the Pontic-Caspian steppe. This suggests that the Kalash might represent a very early split from the ancestral population that gave rise to modern Europeans and South Asians. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember those stories about the Kalash being descended from Alexander the Great's soldiers? Well, genetic studies have found no evidence to support this claim. The Kalash don't show any particular genetic affinity with Greeks or other Mediterranean populations. Instead, their closest genetic relatives appear to be other populations in the Hindu Kush and Pamir mountains. The genetic isolation of the Kalash has had some unique effects. For example, they have a high frequency of certain genetic variants that are rare in other populations. One of these is a variant of the SLC24A5 gene, which is associated with light skin color. This might explain why some Kalash have lighter skin and eyes compared to neighboring populations. But genetic isolation can also have downsides. The Kalash have a higher rate of certain genetic disorders due to what's called the founder effect, when a small founding population passes on a limited set of genes to their descendants. This is a challenge that many small, isolated populations face around the world. The genetic story of the Kalash is a powerful reminder of the complex history of human migrations. It suggests that the ancestors of the Kalash were part of a very early wave of migration out of Central Asia into South Asia, and that they then remained isolated in their mountain valleys for thousands of years. This genetic heritage doesn't just tell us about the past, it also has implications for the future. As the Kalash face pressures to integrate with mainstream Pakistani society, their unique genetic makeup could be at risk. Each person who leaves the community or marries outside it potentially takes with them a piece of this ancient genetic legacy. 5. Traditional ecological knowledge and sustainability. Let's shift our focus now to another remarkable aspect of Kalash culture, their traditional ecological knowledge and sustainable practices. The Kalash have lived in harmony with their challenging mountain environment for thousands of years, developing a deep understanding of local ecosystems and sustainable resource management. The Kalash practice a form of agro-pastoralism that's perfectly adapted to their mountain environment. They cultivate crops in the valleys and lower slopes, while grazing their livestock in high mountain pastures during the summer months. This transhuman system allows them to make the most of limited arable land while preventing overgrazing. One of the most interesting aspects of Kalash ecological knowledge is their forest management system. The Kalash have a traditional practice called Suri Jagak, which involves observing the movement of the sun and stars to predict weather patterns and determine the best times for planting and harvesting. This astronomical knowledge is combined with a deep understanding of local plant and animal species to create a sophisticated system of sustainable forest use. The Kalash divide their forests into different zones, each with its own rules for use. Some areas are considered sacred and left untouched, acting as natural reserves. Others are used for collecting firewood or grazing, but with strict rules to prevent overexploitation. This system has allowed the Kalash to maintain healthy forests in their valleys while still meeting their needs for timber and other forest products. Water management is another area where the Kalash excel. They've developed an intricate system of irrigation channels that distribute water fairly among different households and fields. These channels are maintained communally, reflecting the Kalash ethos of collective responsibility for natural resources. The Kalash also have a rich pharmacopoeia of medicinal plants. Their traditional healers, known as Dahar, possess extensive knowledge of local flora and their medicinal properties. This knowledge, passed down through generations, represents a valuable resource not just for the Kalash themselves, but potentially for the wider world. However, this traditional ecological knowledge is under threat. As younger Kalash increasingly attend mainstream schools and seek opportunities outside their valleys, there's a risk that this ancient wisdom could be lost. Additionally, climate change is altering the local environment in ways that challenge traditional knowledge systems. 6. Challenges to cultural survival. Despite their resilience, the Kalash face numerous challenges to their cultural survival. One of the most pressing is the pressure to convert to Islam. While the Pakistani constitution guarantees freedom of religion, the reality on the ground can be different. Some Kalash have reported facing discrimination and pressure to convert, particularly from zealous missionaries who enter the valleys. Another major challenge is land disputes. The Kalash have traditionally owned their valleys communally, but this system is under threat from both internal and external pressures. There have been legal battles over forest ownership, with neighboring Muslim communities claiming rights to Kalash lands. These disputes not only threaten Kalash livelihoods but also their ability to practice their traditional forest management. Population decline is another concern. The Kalash population has been steadily decreasing, partly due to conversions and partly due to outmigration. As young Kalash leave their valleys for education or job opportunities, there's a risk that the critical mass needed to maintain their unique culture could be lost. 7. Impact of tourism, modernization, and preservation efforts. Tourism has become a double-edged sword for the Kalash. On one hand, it brings much-needed income to the community and has raised awareness about their unique culture. On the other hand, it risks turning Kalash culture into a commodity and disrupting traditional ways of life. Modernization poses its own challenges. Access to modern healthcare and education is undoubtedly beneficial, but it also exposes the Kalash to outside influences that can erode traditional practices. The introduction of television, internet, and social media has connected the Kalash to the wider world, but also exposed their youth to alternative lifestyles that may seem more attractive than their traditional way of life. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are ongoing efforts to preserve Kalash culture. The Pakistani government has taken steps to protect the Kalash, designating their valleys as a heritage site. International organizations have also stepped in, funding projects to document Kalash language and traditions. The Kalash themselves are at the forefront of these preservation efforts. Community leaders are working to establish schools that teach Kalash language and culture alongside the national curriculum. There are also initiatives to record oral traditions and create written materials in the Kalash language. As we conclude our journey through the world of the Kalash, we're left with a profound appreciation for the resilience and richness of this unique culture. The Kalash story is not just about a small community in a remote corner of Pakistan. It's a microcosm of the challenges and opportunities facing indigenous cultures worldwide in the 21st century. The Kalash remind us of the incredible diversity of human cultures and the importance of preserving this diversity. Their sustainable practices offer valuable lessons for a world grappling with environmental crises. Their unique genetic heritage provides insights into human prehistory and the effects of long-term isolation. But perhaps most importantly, the Kalash challenge us to think deeply about what we mean by progress and development. In a world racing towards homogenization, the Kalash offer an alternative vision, one where cultural uniqueness is valued, where humans live in harmony with nature, and where ancient wisdom coexists with modern knowledge. As we look to the future, the fate of the Kalash remains uncertain. Will they be able to maintain their unique identity in the face of modernization and outside pressures? Or will their culture gradually be absorbed into the mainstream? The answer likely lies somewhere in between, a careful balancing act of preserving tradition while adapting to the realities of the modern world. What's certain is that the world would be poorer without the Kalash. Their story is a powerful reminder of the value of cultural diversity and the importance of protecting indigenous knowledge and ways of life. As we end this exploration, I encourage you to reflect on your own cultural heritage and identity. What unique traditions or knowledge do you carry? How can we, as global citizens, support the preservation of diverse cultures like the Kalash? If you found this journey as fascinating as I have, I invite you to dig deeper. There's so much more to learn about the Kalash and other indigenous cultures around the world. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue this conversation about cultural diversity, preservation, and the lessons we can learn from communities like the Kalash. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey into the world of the Kalash. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep appreciating the beautiful tapestry of human cultures that make our world so rich and diverse.